Hey, how you doing? It's time for another live stream discussing the previous stop motion figure. Okay, so Shark, question right off the bat. Okay, so let's see. Stop motion reviewer says, do you do any audio reviews with stop motion? No, I don't. It sounds like you might. There's also a couple of old timers in that game. There's the Lazy Eyebrow Reviewer, and one of my favorites is Cardboard Bots, though not as prolific as I would like. But Cardboard Bots has a nice style. Well, thank you, Stop Motion Reviewer. That's nice. He said my stop motion is God tier. I just control for variables, which is part of the reason I'm not trying to make them do like dances and stuff. And I'm just trying to show you how it transforms. Shark says, I don't know what's better, this or Studio Series. I mean, this is not quite as affordable as Studio Series. Studio Series is a clever design. Bear with me for just a second. Just bear with me for a second. Anyway, so I think a live stream is particularly useful for this guy because stitching him back into dinosaur mode is not as easy as the stop motion makes it look. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but you know, there are issues with it. I wanted to go over one more accessory he has. He has this flail, this spiked ball that can go over his fist. It comes in two parts, and I found that I really just have to kind of take it apart to put it on. I think that's kind of how it's meant to be. This half of the fist has a tab sticking out, and that tab actually goes in the tab on his palm that's used during the transformation. But then you can kind of arrange the fingers inside the shell, and then you can put the other half on. You did ask about the Studio Series Grimlock. That Grimlock doesn't have a right hand. It permanently has the ball. It has some clever... Studio Series was perfectly acceptable for what it is. But if you're going to have something that's like a masterpiece grade, this covers it. This is extremely well done figure. It has some clearance issues. It's got a bit of that design that you see with like Toy World, where, you know, they're like, yeah, you'll get it. You'll get this part past this part. You know, we're not going to worry about it. But it's not clean. It's not completely clean, which I like. It comes with this little Optimus Prime. It's just an action figure, but it's got joints where you would expect them. I'm sure you can find a review online that goes over every stupid joint, and I'm not going to bother with it. But you can pose it pretty good, and I like it. It's nicely painted. It's got a really shiny metallic paint. It's kind of hard to come across, but yeah, it's kind of coming across. But it's very nicely done. It has a little sword that can store on his back, and it can go in his fist. So tra-la-la. And then he also has a port on his butt that plugs into a peg on the neck of the Dinobot, so he attaches fairly securely to the neck. I guess we'll get to that. I have to transform it into dinosaur mode in order to ship it back. And oh, and by the way, thank you to the Chosen Prime. Brandon at the Chosen Prime loaned this figure to me, as they've done many times in the past. And it was a great opportunity to handle a figure that's not really in my budget. So we will... there's a bias to this little peg on the mace. It seems to favor being plugged into the palm socket on the left hand. It may be that you can stick it on the right hand, but it turns it around the other way, so he can't grasp it as properly if it's turned around like that. So it's not symmetrical. It has a bias. We'll get to the mace in a little bit. So we gonna transform them. Let me make sure there's no critical messages I gotta catch up on. Yeah. You're not that new guy, are you, stop motion reviewer, that I've seen recently? Stop motion reviewer. Because there was a guy that recently started showing up doing stop motions. He does real clean stop motions. I don't know if that was you or some other guy. What was his name? He's not very prolific, so I'd have to go back through my timeline in YouTube to find him. Unless it's just you. Let me see if I can spot him in this list of videos, because I know his style. I know kind of pictures he does. Maybe I'll come back and see if you said it was you. Yeah, well, I mean, it's a really good version to get. It's awesome. Without any further ado, let's transform him into a dinosaur. There's a lot of little tricks to managing the transformation, and especially getting everything to tab in properly in dinosaur mode. I'm just going to square off the legs for now. And we'll start with the arms, why not? Or we can do the back, that's fine. So, little note on this tabbing. It's purely a friction tab, and it can be a little tricky to get it to tab. You just have to realize the tab holes are a little lower than it looks like, and just line it up and get it to tab in. Because it's a friction tab, I could see it eventually coming loose. There's a little bit of tension, like it wants to come off, and so it's friction that holds it in. But this whole thing flips down as back, like this. The jaws, unfortunately, didn't come across as well as I would have hoped in the video, but this slides out, and then this kind of articulates around. When you're going back into robot mode, you just want to make sure the tongue is depressed all the way. You don't need it floating around. And then it goes back together, and you just have to kind of look at where the holes and the tabs go together. There's only two pegs and 2 tabs that you have to worry about. There's your 2 pegs and 2 holes just on the lower end of the jaw. So just don't worry about any of these other holes. But we're going to dinosaur mode, so this bar in the middle kind of collapses into both halves. So you have to make sure you pull them all the way out. So that's one head. And I think if I remember correctly, the head goes up like that. And then the other head is just the same, except it has tabs instead of holes and holes instead of tabs, because the 2 halves have to go together. So we get that. And then when you put these halves of the back together to form the neck of the dinosaur, these things end up crisscrossing, and they end up on the opposite side than they were originally. And then you can lower these together if you put them on the right side, like I did. Did I? Did I get them backwards? That's so annoying. Let me just... This will probably be like USB, where they're not backwards, but I'm just going to have to do it wrong once to convince myself that it's not backwards. No, because then they can't go side by side. So I was right. It's USB. Anyway, these things go like this, and then they tab together. The whole thing tabs together, including the tongue, so it just helps to have it homed before you do that. And then these halves tab together. And that's the dino head and neck. You also fold these in towards each other and tab them in together. They have a lot of adornments that you can stand up, like in dinosaur mode, or I guess in robot mode if you wanted to, but they'd be kind of one-sided. But you can stand up these spikes for dinosaur mode. This one tends to go a little too far, but some of them go too far. Some of them don't seem to go far enough. But you can kind of get them all to the same angle if you want to. The tail can go back and forth at this joint. It can go up and down at this joint and up and down at this joint. The whole thing kind of sandwiches up the armature. And so that's just the head and the tail. I think it's great how the neck of the dinosaur, which is otherwise something you have to like do something with, the Hasbro Studio Series kind of hid the arm in the neck. But I like how the neck becomes two halves of the upper back. That's good reuse of that. Let's work on the arms. Going to turn them into legs. So we're just going to straighten all the joints out. So this can kind of flip up. On this side, it's like a little loose. It's not hinged through. It's not hinged on both sides. So it has a little bit of give. It's only hinged basically on the back half of it. In fact, there's a little screw there. I don't have my screwdrivers, but I found in particular that this joint here, right there, there's a screw there, and it would kind of get loose. And so I'd tighten that screw a little bit so the arm could hold itself properly, you know. All right, so we're going to take the hands and we're going to flip them around and kind of move them out of the way a little bit. We're going to take these dino feet. I'm going to fold it down, and there's a point where it won't rub much if you turn it. Right there, just past the 90-degree point. You can turn it with impunity. But then you just fold that as far as it'll go, which isn't all the way. And then the hand has a port on the palm, and it plugs into if you have all the angles right. So you actually don't move this as far as it can go because you want to plug that port in. And then this finger kind of gets in the way of this heel spur for the dinosaur. It doesn't matter. It's not part of it standing, so don't bother with it. We can flip this out of the way a little bit. This flips down. It unfolds, and then it plugs into the leg. It can be kind of hard to get a grip on it to pull it back off the leg, so one thing you can do is you can kind of twist the leg a little bit, and it will inevitably fall off, which is kind of unfortunate because when you go to pose it, it'd be nice to use this rotation joint here, but this actually locks out that rotation joint, so you can't actually use it. And then we want to transition this arm up, but then bend it down at the second joint there. So it goes like that. And then there's like this is kind of a hole, and there's a little flap that fills in that hole. And then that's pretty much the leg. You can spread the toes out, but we'll do that later. There's a lot of comments, so let's see. Hey, me again. I fixed it. I just had to loosen a few screws. You fixed what? You have to remind me. Oh, Barricade MP5? Okay, cool. Oh, you were the one that was having trouble getting the transformation to happen there. Well, I'm glad. I kind of missed that possibility that maybe it's just too tight or something. So good job figuring it out. I mean, hopefully it helped to see like what it's supposed to do. Then you could be like, why doesn't it do that? I think this is kind of a niche figure. I can't see GCreation going like full movie Dinobots. The other Dinobots didn't figure much in the movie. They weren't as prominent. I don't know if there's enough of a market to do all the Dinobots in this, high die-cast, high metal, heavy, expensive style. I can't see them bothering. What I want them to do, GCreation needs to get off their asses and make that IDW Megatron that they teased with a silhouette back in the day when their IDW Prime came out, which is like my favorite figure. And so the IDW Megatron might have had a chance to become my new favorite figure, but they never made it, which was very disappointing. So we're just lining up the palm socket with the leg. We bring this up and this down, and we can flip over this little cover flap here. It does nothing really. It doesn't even really cover here, which actually exists on dinosaur mode if you want to get it to pose properly, so who can say. But those are the legs. And then you just have to remember his head ends up his butt. So if you want to go ahead and get the legs into kind of a dinosaur position, there's a big rotation joint there. There's also a rotation joint here. But we're going to want to get this one to move. And we want to move it so the dinosaur leg is pointed at the bottom or forward. And it helps to get that kind of nice and square 90-degree turn to get everything to stand properly later. So we're just going to bend that out. Watch our tabs here. There's probably better times to move the legs. I leave it up to you. I'm just getting them out of the way so I can focus on everything else. And it's kind of how I did it in the video. But I twisted this and it pops right off. So you have to remember that it'll do that all the time. Just like that. Anyway. There's the legs. These components, they kind of raise up on a double hinge, but the base of that hinge is on a slider. You can see there. And so it slides inward when you raise it up and then you slide it inward. And the bottoms of them kind of line up with the bottom, with the cutouts on this cod piece here. And then these end up going straight down. So we're just prepping everything here for the hard part. These are on sliders, but I'm not quite sure why. You can kind of bring it forward. It's not supposed to tab in robot mode, but it does end up tabbing into that same tab in dinosaur mode. But I don't know why it slides. It doesn't have, I never found a particularly good reason. This is really clever. I wanted to point this out. Might be too late, but I've already partially transformed the waist in the front, so there's not as much clearance here, but you can see this turns. It turns, right? But you take these two components, and as long as the waist is straight, you can rotate these around. So just to picture a mushroom peg, you know, in a mashing hole. So I'm talking about a peg that has like a flange at the bottom, so that it can ride inside a groove, which is exactly what's holding this in. But in this case, they've taken that mushroom peg and they've cut it in half. And they've cut the groove that it rides around in half. And so consequently, this can turn no matter which way, which of the two positions you put this, you still get a waist rotation. So that's a nice, that's clever. I like how they needed something to turn, but they put it right on the waist, and then they allowed the waist to still turn, which is awesome. Now that this is out of the way, you can fold down the antenna on top of his head, and you can fold this shelf that holds his head all the way in. And his head just kind of nestles there, right up his butt. This is the hard part. I'm going to see what I'm going to start with here. So I'm going to spread this joint. It's like a slide out joint going right through here. And then we're going to flip it up, and we're going to get the arm of the dinosaur folded out. You just have to find a way to do that. There we go. And I like to keep it like folded over because I want it to be as short as possible for the next step. We're going to do the same thing over here. I'm just going to fold it up. Helps to just move the claw out of the way, and then we fold it up here, and we're just putting it on the outside of that tab, because the thing is, this annoyingly only it'll stop in this direction. It would have actually really helped if the thing rotated, if you could rotate it the other way around, but unfortunately you have to rotate it this way, and you got to do it as early as you can. One reason to have the legs out of the way like that, so it doesn't collide with anything when you're doing it. But you're just getting these up out of the way. You're folding in these calf pieces, which really is important. We're going to fold in the toe ornament and the heel spur, which looks more like a foot than the ornament does. And then this folds up and grabs this tab. Same thing over here. I'm going to do it on camera this time, I promise. This folds up and grabs the tab. So, in case you missed the foot, I think it was off camera. I was doing a standard reviewer thing by ignoring where the camera is. All right. So now we're ready to do the complicated collidey, not quite thought out thing. So we're just keeping this out of the way. It'll flop down in your way all the time. You just got to keep it out of the way. We're going to fold at this mid-thigh joint that is a transformation joint. It doesn't serve any purpose otherwise. So this is the direction we're headed in. It does help to get these rib cage components like rotated out before you start trying to pin things together. So let's just go ahead and do that real quick. Like that. All right, so we're going to angle the legs out just a little bit. The main goal is we're trying to avoid that big thick neck there, and it can be challenging. These have to end up on the outside of the leg, but if you fold it all the way out like that, it'll just get in the way. So you just have to kind of keep it angled just a little bit so the legs end up where they're supposed to. It takes a lot of fiddling to get it to go. So we're going to continue to fold the leg over. The knee and everything is supposed to be basically straight, so you don't have to worry about articulating the leg in any particular way. So we're folding it over, and then we're making sure as we lower it down that this tab ends up on the outside of here, which can be kind of tricky. So we're just moving things out of the way. Because we had to angle the leg out, now we have to kind of fight it back in. You see it's at an angle. So we've got to get it to unangle, which can be tricky because shit's hitting other stuff. Let's just try to get it below the head there. There we go. So we've got the head raised up far enough that we can kind of rotate that leg back into position. In the process, we're ending up with this tab on the outside of that plane there. The tail can start to peg in. There's a peg on the inside of the thigh there, and there's these tabs on the tail armature, and so that plugs in there, and then you can kind of raise the tail up. And so this, in a nutshell, is, and these ornaments on the chest can raise up to give them a little better clearance with the legs. They don't really do much. So this is the proper position for a leg. So we've made sure that this tab, I have failed to make sure of that. So this tab is tabbed in. Let's look at it from this side. I guess the knee ends up slightly bent. It's hard to tell. My foot keeps landing on a wire that's suspended across open space. It's annoying me. All right. And so now we're going to do the same thing with the other half. So we've already angled it out a little bit. Angled it out. Not too far. You just want it just enough that you're going to be able to clear. We're going to lower it down, and then we're going to do what we can to get this to clear and angle it back in. There we go. Now you see we've made we've run into the problem where this is on top of that. So you can see it's on top. We need this bit to go inside that tab, which is a pain in the ass. Let me tell you. So we're just getting it close enough. Come on, stop defying me, for God's sakes. I just don't think I've angled it in sufficiently. Yeah. We gotta watch for this tab to be able to go in that tail armature. There's a tab there. So we're just fighting that onto there. And then this can be a real pain in the ass if it's not right. So you have to dance this one part past the other part, and it does not want to cooperate. So we're trying to get that to go in. But you can see if you flip this out that it just makes it worse. It collides worse if you flip it out, so it's a pain in the ass. There we go. Got it in. All right, got it in. Now we're gonna get that tab tabbed. There we go. and making sure everything's lining up. We're going to make sure that these 2 feet end up tabbed together. There's a cylindrical peg and a hole, so it's just friction tab there. Just helps. It's like an alignment tab. It's not going to hold it. And then we just make sure that the legs are still, these feet, remember there's like a thick tab there. Let me see if I can find something to point with. There's this thick tab, and it went into the block at the bottom of the foot. That'll kind of come loose, so you have to get that to re-tab onto the foot, like so. Let's just see if the other one is untabbed too. Different angle. So we gotta get that tabbed. It's very important for later, so just make sure you do it. There we go. There we go. And then the tail just kind of lays down there. Some more tabs to attend to. So, assuming you've got the legs nice and straight, there's some big tabs here on the part of the thigh, and then there's some big holes in the waist skirt that was there. And so those ostensibly tab together. Doesn't want to right now. I think it's because I think the legs have to end up down just a little bit. So let's just. It doesn't want it because it's tabbed. All right, well, it doesn't. It's hard to line up. It's a fact. Because these things actually tab into the ports on the sides of the thighs that they almost tab into in robot mode. Except now here in dyno mode, you actually want them tabbed. I went and untabbed it. Now it's hard to tab. Same with this other side here. Do have to make it sure it slid down all the way. Maybe that's why it slides. I don't know. So you're getting those 2 tabbed. And then you're getting this this part here. It rotates down and tabs into a port. Let's see if we can show you the port. So there's the port. Rectangular port. Rectangular tab. And so it goes in there. And yeah, I got it. Tabs. So you tab this one as well. Again, you have to make sure that it ends up under that. And it tabs in here. All right. And then you can tab the chest, but I think I'm just going to save it for last because there's just so much other activity that's going to go on. So just making sure that this is pressed in properly. Everything's still lined up. We want to make sure that these tabs at the front end up extended out. And we want to make sure that these are extended out and this is all relatively flat. And so now we're ready to mess around with the mace. So this is just an extra piece. It doesn't store anywhere as far as I can tell. If it did, it would look pretty unsightly, so we won't worry about that. This untabs from these 2 tabs. It can be a little hard to line them up when you come back. You have to make sure that this goes inside these 2 halves, and you just want to make sure that these 2 tabs are actually presented, and then you can tab it in. So that can be a little tricky, so there you go. But we're going to unfold that completely. We're going to unfold these. These pieces here, they kind of go like this in dinosaur mode, and they kind of go 90 degrees straight out at each other when you go into mace mode. Like that. So we can rotate these around. It's just a mushroom peg, so it popped out of its little socket there. And then we fold this out. We have to lift this up and we have to rotate it 180 degrees. So now it's laying the other way. This articulates out, extends. This component untabs from here, and you fold this around, you fold this up, and then you continue around for no particular reason other than to kind of finish off the neck with a replacement part. So that's interesting. You end up with this thorn pointing inward. This thorn was pointing up when it was, let's just turn it around and show you. So it was up, so it ends up down when you rotate it around. So there's two thorns that end up kind of poking inside the dinosaur. And now we're ready to apply this piece to the dinosaur. We're going to start on the back. The tail is arranged. Most importantly, I'm going to go ahead and do the head so it stops flopping around. I'm just going to do it. So the head, come on. The head comes through here. You have to make sure that these two, this is part of my problem. This has to be flipped down so the knees can actually get closer to each other. That's much better. Yeah, that was part of my problem with getting things to line up. You have to get this crotch piece out of the way. Anywho, remember to do that. Hope you're not watching this video like doing it one step at a time with me, because you are screwed. Which is why these wouldn't tab either, by the way. So they could theoretically tab if we could. They really don't like to, though. There we go. They go like that. But they tend to come off while you're messing with it. Anyway, these spring-loaded things, you just want to make sure that they're situated as low as possible. They're going to end up nestling inside the neck. So you're just extending the neck as far as it'll go, and you're rocking it past that point. There we go. So you see they end up kind of inside the neck. This can be a real pain in the ass to put in position later if you don't do everything else right. So if you're having trouble with those, you didn't do everything else right. Okay, so let's get back to putting the tail thing on. So this captures this, there's like a tab there. It's going to be forced up into this position. There's a couple of holes here. And what we're dealing with is a ridge that captures that tab and a couple of pegs that'll go into those holes. So we start with that. So grab the tab. So in other words, make sure the tail is up. And those pegs are going to go into those holes. Real easy. They're not hard-pressed pegs. But here's where it gets tricky. The first thing that gets tricky, we're just going to kind of hold that in place while we rotate the figure. So our goal here is to lower this down. There's two big, thick L tabs. Here's one. And there's one on the other side. And they're going to end up in these sockets here. So it's a real strong connection. That's why everything, you have to make sure that it's flat up top so this goes down far enough to capture that. And then you're just keeping this flap out of the way while you do it. Also, this tab here on the middle of this section is going to tab into the foot. So we're getting both of those, a twofer. So I'm just going to make sure it goes all the way down, grabs it. So now that tab is in there. We're going to do the same thing on this side. It's a little trickier because the other side, you know, without one side plugged in, you have a little more give. There you go, tabbed in. And then I like to kind of maintain control of that because I don't want that to come untabbed. I don't want to deal with that again. So we lower this down. So it lowers down its back. It doesn't really tab in anywhere else except up at the front. So we're going to lower that down. We're going to see if we can do this without screwing it up. So there's a couple of holes in the top of the neck, and there's a couple of tabs on the back of the neck. And we're just going to get those to show up at the same time. All right. This does go on top of these spikes. Should keep that in mind. This there's a tab here, and there's a hole in this thing, and when you bring this up, it grabs it fairly firmly. So we're just going to do the same thing with the other one. Ends up, it kind of grabs in front of it and grabs that tab at the same time. And these tend to come off, these two tabs. So you just have to get them back on. And then if everything is lined up properly and you've done everything properly, so this is sitting nice and flat, and all the tabs were tabbed in the back and in the front, then you should find that these two halves come together nice and clean without anything pressuring them apart anymore. So that's the parts forming portion of this figure. Let's see if we can finally get these flaps on the bottom to snap in, or at least go. They just kind of go like that. The head can extend a little bit so that you can get some sideways movement. But for the most part, you unextend it so it doesn't break the sculpt. And then the legs, you have to kind of fiddle with them, but you have to bend this 90 degrees, like more than you would expect, and it kind of leaves the sculpt open, but it stands a lot better like that. So there's those. His thumbs weren't put away properly. Okay. I'm going to spread the toes out, and then we're going to fiddle around with getting them to stand. He can be a little tricky. And this does like to come untabbed. Come on, buddy. Stay tabbed for a minute. There we go. So that's it. Big old dinosaur. He is a little front heavy. He really likes to fall over. That's it. I don't think there's been too many comments since then. Where can you get them? Well, you can get them at the Chosen Prime if you go to the stop motion video for him from Sunday. I have a direct link to the sales page at Chosen Prime. Chosen Prime was kind enough to loan me this figure, so I'm only too happy to point you in his direction. Still in stock, the last I saw this morning. I can check for you now. Let's take a look. Conversely, I can go to Toys Commerce. You can go to www.thechosenprime.com. Use the search box in the top right-hand corner to type Wrath. Let's see, in stock now and shipping. And you won't be disappointed if you order from them now. It's a little late in the day now, but they'll have this thing in a box and out the door to you by the end of the day tomorrow. They really don't mess around, these guys, with shipping. They ship right away. I don't know if you've ever ordered something from like Big Bad Toy Store and it takes like 4 days for it to start shipping. Chosen Prime understands that you want your plastic crack and you want it now. So I really appreciate that about those guys. But head over to thechosenprime.com and get yourself one of these. It's pretty impressive. Like I said, this guy's got a port in his butt. So we'll just kind of arrange his legs a little bit. His sword. And there's like a little peg on the dinosaur's back that this guy can sit on. So he doesn't come off easily. He can be like, "Into battle, Grimlock, my old friend," or whatever. Thanks for the transformation stream. I got mine from Chosen Prime also and shipped the same day I ordered. That's right. If you ship early enough in the day, they'll ship it out the same freaking day because they don't mess around, those guys. They're awesome. Well, that's it. I covered the whole thing. He comes, you know, kind of packed away as a dinosaur. So I needed to get him back to dino mode to put him back in his shipping box. And I'll get that shipped back to my buddy Brandon at the Chosen Prime tomorrow, and he can put him back in his collection. They do the shows, so if there's ever shows again, I've run into Brandon at TFCon in DC, and they pack up their truck and go all over the place on shows. They sponsor a lot of shows, especially TFCon. I think is sponsored by them. So, great company. Order from them. Yeah, it was not tabbed in. It's pretty cool. It's got really great finish. I mean, it doesn't necessarily come across on my crappy webcam, but there's kind of a greenish patina almost like he was bronze at some point. And it's real nice. I mean, it's painted all over the place, and the molding is really interesting and lumpy, almost like a lobster carapace. Really interesting. Of course, you can open his mouth, and you can. It's hard to do it. You got to get under it, but you can raise his tongue up. Let me see if I can get a better angle. Try to get a hook on his tongue. There we go. Raise that tongue up. So now you can be like, bleh. Bleh, I'm a dinosaur. Bleh. The main advantage to doing like a deep bend with this leg joint is that you can get it folded under his leg to stand it better. Because you can get the other joint folded out, and then this, you just want to go another notch, folded back, and you end up with a really solid stance that way, but it really breaks the mold. It really creates like an opening there. But it stands a lot better like that, because you're putting the fulcrum, like where the leg ends, you're putting it further forward. But the only way he's going to stand at an angle like you like is to bend that knee a lot at that point. Superb figure. If you want a masterpiece style movie Grimlock that's maybe not to scale, because how could you do that? I mean, this would be Unique Toys Challenger. The scale would be too much. But they made sure that they made him bigger than any other MPM. So, I mean, I don't know. Dragoon's pretty damn tall, too. But he's imposing. He's like 12 inches tall. And if that's your bag, you can't do any better than this guy. There is no better choice. If you're on a budget, the Studio Series one is pretty good. But this one is superb. And with that, that's all I got. I don't see any... it would be fun if they did the other Dinobots, but he's not. He's not. Yoshikage Kira has seconded my notion that he's well worth the money. I mean, it's solidly built. There's not like pieces coming off or anything like that. It's just it can be a little tricky to get it packed away into Dino mode. I think it's really clever how they kind of folded the legs over, and that forms most of the body of the dinosaur. Nobody else has tried to do that. Of course, Studio Series uses the dino legs to make the robot legs, and then you got to produce the robot arms from somewhere. It thoroughly hides the little dino arms, which is nice. No unnecessary kibble in robot mode. I mean, it looks exactly like the CGI model. The CGI model, the legs of the robot actually have like 4 spikes sticking out either side, and it actually they reuse these rib cage elements to produce those 4 spikes sticking out the sides. If you want convincing, I mean, pull up a picture of pull up some pictures of this guy, and then pull up some pictures of the actual CGI model or the scenes from the movie, and it's very close. I don't know how they get all these details just right. 'Cause I doubt they went to Hasbro and said, "Hey, can we get the CGI model from you?" or Paramount. So, pretty nicely done. And that's it, gang. I'm going to be signing off here in a minute. I'll keep an eye out for any desperate last-minute questions. This weekend, we will be doing I will be doing the MMC Ocular Max Probus, which is their version of Brawl from the Combaticons. That will be a separate video, just like all the other figures were. So don't expect the combiner this Sunday. Next Sunday, I'm going to produce, use some best of sort of clips from the other transformations, but I want to do like a combiner video for MMC Assaultus because it's like a separate character. I didn't do that for Studio Series Devastator because I didn't care enough. But MMC Assaultus, we're going to spend a little extra time on him Sunday. So in all, you'll end up with 6 videos. You'll end up with the 5 figures, the 5th one this Sunday. And then you're going to have a 6th video that's just Assaultus coming together and forming the combined mode. They call it Assaultus, it's Bruticus, it's the Combaticons. So that's what you should expect this weekend, just Probus. A nice standalone video for Probus to honor a very nice little tank design. I love tank bots. So we have that to look forward to. And then we'll do a live stream discussion of Probus next Wednesday, ignoring Assaultus. And then we'll have the Assaultus video and then an Assaultus live stream showing how to put them together, any tricks, and showing them off live, you know. And that's it. Thanks, gang. Have a nice day, and see you Sunday.